Warning: All Things Crime is a true crime production that may contain violent or disturbing material. Viewer or listener discretion is advised.
Well, there was one time I was in Virginia, and there's a speed trap set up, and the trooper gets out of his vehicle, and of course, I pulled over right away, windows down, hands on the wheel, and I remember he got to the car, he just looked at me, and he goes, "Sir, can I get your license and registration?" So I hand him everything. He says, "Sir, step out of the car." So now I'm thinking, oh boy, what's going to happen? I didn't know in certain spots in Virginia, this is actually standard practice. They just want you to get out the car so that they can take a good look at you. And I got out the car, and the look he gave me, he just goes, "Oh no!" Like he actually vocally said, "Oh no." So I go, "Can I hand you one more piece of ID in my back pocket?" He says, "Sure." I give him my job ID, and he goes, "Oh, thank God." Turns out we had rented a vehicle, and the vehicle's license plate came back to a whole bunch of suspended summonses, which wasn't my fault, which wasn't, I don't know whose fault it was, but he goes, "Yeah, I thought I was going to have to put you in cuffs." And I was just thinking about what was going to happen. I said, "No, we actually wound up becoming friends. I'm friends with him to this day. We call each other and joke around." But he was so visibly relieved that I wasn't going to fight him and that I was actually on his side.
Zeke, welcome to All Things Crime.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I definitely appreciate the opportunity.
The pleasure is all mine. And for my listening and viewing audience, I want to introduce Zeke. He is he's a police officer, and he's also a podcaster. And I see him, he's really active on different social media platforms. So if you ever get the chance to look him up, definitely do and give him a follow. And his podcast is awesome. So especially if you guys want to know really what policing is like in today's environment, then you you got to listen to Zeke. And he puts what is it, CWA on there, a cop with attitude.
Cop with attitude, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it, man. And that's one of the things that actually attracted my attention to you. And first, I think Twitter is where I first saw you, some of your comments and things. And I was like, man, this is a guy after my own heart. So I got to figure out who this is and see if I can get him on my show.
No, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it makes me glad that a lot of cops are listening in and reading my tweets and listening to the podcast, and they're agreeing with, a lot of what I have to say. It's a great feeling when, I'm walking down the street and a cop will see me. He'll, "Zeke, I follow you." A lot of times it scares me, but because he jumps out of nowhere, but it's a good feeling. Lets me know I'm going in the right direction.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are kind of closet types that, they really agree with a lot of the things that you say, but I think this is by design. Many of them are actually afraid to voice an opinion like the way you do, especially when you grab a microphone or a megaphone, basically is what you're doing, and just blasting it out there, because it's weird what is going on. And like I mentioned earlier, this isn't a political show, but it's a show about policing, and it's a show about the whole crime process. Now, in my travels, and I've traveled all over the world, and so I especially enjoyed listening to some of your other guests on your podcast. They talk about world travels and how lots of people really have no idea what they're talking about because they've never been there. They've never actually experienced what they're voicing their opinion on, which drives me crazy. In the process of doing that, it was really enlightening to me, because I was like, of all the people that need to be talking about how to do better policing and how to do better law enforcement, it should be law enforcement. And I think you actually mentioned in one of your podcasts that you were saying, of all the panels and things that you're talking about reforming police and everything, there's no cops on there. There's nobody that actually has any street experience who's talking about the reforms that need to happen. And so I wanted to get you on today to, get your opinion on that. So, as opposed to the political side, if we were to make some good changes, and well, first of all, before we even talk about changes, let's talk about what you think the problem is. So as you're out there in the streets and you were actually, doing your job, what is it you're running into? So what's it like out there?
Honestly, if we're going to talk about fixing anything in policing, I mean, the problem has to be addressed. The hard questions need to be asked to a lot of people in the community. Why aren't you taking more of a responsibility for what happens in your neighborhoods, in your communities? Yesterday, there was a 7-year-old girl shot in Chicago that I mentioned on Twitter. Why aren't there protests looking for answers for this 7-year-old girl getting shot? She didn't do anything wrong to anyone. She was waiting in line for McDonald's and McDonald's drive-through. Why aren't there protests? Why isn't the mayor, who cried for a 13-year-old gang member, why isn't the mayor crying for this girl? Why aren't there community leaders working with the police to try to bring whoever shot this little girl into custody? Why? I just have all these questions. Why? They always talk about police reform. Let's change policing. Let's get policing out there with less weapons. Let's, work on de-escalation. Well, when is the community going to get their training? When are the parents going to get their training to be more active in their children's lives? When are teachers going to get training in order to stop their indoctrination? It's not a teacher's job to train a kid on how they feel, how a teacher feels. I don't think there's anything really wrong or broken about policing. I think a few things need to get cleaned up here and there, but little tiny minuscule things. I think the main change needs to happen in the community, with the parents, with the teachers, with these neighborhood activists. If you want to see real change, that's where it starts.
There is so much absolute truth in what you just said. And it's so bizarre to me. I mean, it's hard to even put it into words, honestly. The shift that is happening away from personal responsibility. It's like nobody's responsible for anything. It's always somebody else's fault now. And the weird thing about communities as a whole, and you can go back all the way to the Wild West days, as a whole, take the movie Tombstone. I'm assuming you've seen Tombstone before.
Who hasn't?
I mean, yeah, right. What a classic that movie is. So,
Yeah, exactly.
and there's different, like Wyatt Earp, but it's all the same thing. So if you look at these Wild West type shows, and it shows the community as a whole is struggling, but they're all helping each other. They're all kind of, everybody goes to the general store and buys from there. And then the general store guy helps the ranchers. But there's always like one or two central figures that their job is to enforce the laws, the rules that the community establishes. But there's only, for a town of 100 people or 200 people, there's like one guy. And if that one guy, the sheriff, doesn't have the support of the community, there's no way he would be able to actually enforce what the rules are that they established. And to me, today, when you look at today's environment and you look at guys like you that are out there trying to enforce the rules and the laws that the community established, they told you what they wanted enforced. And then they said, okay, now go out and enforce it. But then when you do go out and enforce it, they come down on you. They come down like a hammer, and they're like, you got to stop doing that. And it's like, well, make up your mind. Do you want laws enforced or not? And if you don't, then okay, we'll go find something else to do and you're on your own. But they don't want that. They just want you to become whatever it is they have in their mind that they should have. And I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But
No.
so what is, in that kind of a context, do you agree with that, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, they have this picture, like you said, of what they want us to be. And it's the complete opposite of what actually happens in the real world. Cops will love voluntary compliance 100% of the time. If that could actually happen, that's a great day, a great situation for a cop. The truth is, people fight back. A lot of times they don't want to go back to jail. A lot of times they don't, they want to resist just because they think it's the thing to do, whether it's for street cred or whatever. So policing then gets ugly, as I say. There's no pretty way to take someone into custody who's trying to fight you. It gets ugly, it gets real, it gets physical. The problem is now it's on TV and everybody wants to cry, oh, police brutality, police brutality. First of all, the problem could be stopped from them not resisting. And then second of all, we need a little bit more understanding. We're doing our jobs. We're actually not trying to hurt this person. We're trying to get them under control. Now, are there cops that take it a little bit too far? Sure. We've all seen video of cops where we kind of look at that and go, ugh, he probably shouldn't have done that. But for the overwhelming majority, the cops are out there doing the right thing. They're doing the job to the best of their ability. And at the end of the day, they just want to go home. There's no hidden agenda. There's no, prejudice. There's no animosity. You do your job, you go home. But the elected officials, the easiest solution for them is just to blame the cops. It's an invincible position. They get to blame the cops. They get to say, oh, we're going to do better. We're going to introduce this kind of training. We're going to do de-escalation, which people seem to think that you can abuse the cops as much as you want without them getting mad or yelling back. And the community gets off scot-free. Like you said, it's always someone else's fault. But that's why I said, if you want to address the real problems in the community, if you want real change, if you want real progress, you have to start there. It's not an easy answer. But for any politician that truly wants to affect change, that's where they have to start.
My thought is all of these politicians that are out there bashing on the cops, to me, I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are the ones that set these rules. So the people elected you to go out and make laws. And once you make the laws, we hire people to go out and enforce the laws. And then when they get enforced, you don't like them. I'm like,
Right.
well, you are the politician. So if you don't like what these guys are doing out there, then change the laws.
Yeah.
And then face the consequences of the community saying, what do you mean it's not against the rules to rob people anymore? You're an idiot. I'm going to vote you out of there. But none of the politicians want to do that. They just want to make, you guys the bad guys. And again, to me, it's this weird cycle that we're in. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. And have you, do you know Dion Joseph? He's out in LA.
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. You need to look him up. He was also a guest on this podcast and videocast, and fantastic guy. He's a cop out there and works Skid Row. And so there's a lot of homeless out there, and some of the things that he does, especially on LinkedIn, some of his videos are just spot on fantastic. And so I think you two would really be a force together, talking from both coasts and being able to almost join your message. I think he's kind of the same mindset that you are, in that, look, making the police and making law enforcement the scapegoat and the enemy is not going to end well for anybody, even the people that are actually doing it. I don't think they understand the long game here, because ultimately, if you get rid of law enforcement or you weaken law enforcement, it's the same with the military. I have a military background. So as they weaken the military, what is your goal might be to fix law enforcement or the military, but ultimately, what is the repercussion of that? And the more you handcuff the cops, the worse society is going to get. To me, I just don't understand how people cannot see that.
Well, I mean, it's an easy, like I said, it's an easy fix for them. Their main goal is to get reelected. So they're not going to do anything to mess with that. They're not going to give hard answers towards the community that might work in the long run, but for the short term, they don't get reelected, or they jeopardize their chances of being reelected. Or, for them to get reelected, they have to give the easy, soft answer, which is to demonize cops, to weaken the military, to go after the people that to sort of pick and choose where they want to go. Yeah, I mean, just like I said, they create these laws, like you said, they create these laws. The people don't understand if you want the laws changed, you have to affect the lawmakers. The people making the most noise right now are the ones affecting change. You're talking about Black Lives Matter, you're talking about Antifa, they're making the most noise. So according to these politicians, they think this is what the people want. This is why I tell people you have to be more vocal and more open about your support for cops. Once these elected politicians see that there's a swell of support for cops, they're going to change their tune. You know, even the most liberal of them are going to change their tune.